Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel continues to kill and injure Palestinians across the Gaza Strip while shelling areas east of the so-called Yellow Line. It is also still preventing the entry of shelters and basic supplies during relentless storms, which have been collapsing tents and partially destroyed buildings on top of people. Israel has killed 394 Palestinians and injured nearly 1,100 since the October 10th alleged ceasefire, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza. On Wednesday, the ministry reported that at least one Palestinian was killed and another was injured in Israeli attacks. Mahmoud Basal, spokesperson for the civil defense, gathered pieces of shrapnel in the aftermath of an Israeli attack on the center of Gaza City on Wednesday. 11 people were injured in the explosion. Reporter Syed Hezbollah filmed that clip. Israeli forces shelled areas east of Jabalia refugee camp in the north and east of Khan Yunis and Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip, while bulldozers were reported moving into the northeast areas of Deir Balah in central Gaza, according to reports. On Tuesday, Israeli forces launched air attacks and fired shells within the so-called Yellow Line and opened fire into areas in central Gaza, including Deir Balah and the Burej refugee camp. The United Nations Humanitarian Office stated on Sunday, December 14th, that Israeli shelling and airstrikes targeted multiple locations over the weekend, including a strike on a car in a crowded Gaza City street on Saturday that killed at least 4 people and injured 25 bystanders. Reporter Hamdan Dahdu filmed ambulance crews and rescue workers gathering pieces of human flesh and body parts in the aftermath of the strike. 11 Palestinians were killed and more than 50 were injured in just a 48-hour period between Friday and Sunday. At least 16 deaths, including 3 children, have been reported over recent days as severe winter storms and heavy winds continue to collapse already fragile tents and partially destroyed buildings where many have sought last resort shelter from the dangerous cold. The UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, reported that multiple waterlogged buildings collapsed on families sheltering in them. Mohammed Tammuz filmed the collapse of a home belonging to the Abu Safiya family in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza on December 12th. Civil defense spokesperson Mahmoud Basal said that at least 17 residential buildings have completely collapsed and at least 90 have partially collapsed in the last week. He added that rains continue to flood tents, leaving thousands of families without shelter, as Israel continues to refuse to allow in adequate shelters, including prefabricated caravans, heavy machinery, and construction materials to protect people from the elements. Reporter Syed Hezbollah filmed a boy showing the damage that the screaming, quote, "We are drowning, oh God. Where are the people? Where is humanity?" At least 3 children have died of hypothermia in the last week due to the cold and Israel's continued refusal to allow in necessary shelters and materials. 9-year-old Hadil Abdullah Hamdan was carried to a clinic in a blanket in the arms of a loved one on December 12th after dying in a displacement camp in Gaza City. Journalist Hamza Kureka filmed this clip. A 2-week-old infant, Mohammed Khalil Abu al-Khair, died on Monday, December 15th, from extreme hypothermia even after being in intensive care for several days, medical sources reported. And on December 11th, an infant, Taim al-Khawaja, also died from hypothermia in the beach refugee camp. A video clip from reporter Hassan Salem shows an elderly man carrying the infant's tiny body wrapped in a shroud. Jonathan Fowler of UNRWA told Al Jazeera that the agency, quote, has shelter supplies for more than 1 million people sitting outside the Gaza Strip that we could bring in. So there's a political choice to deny us the possibility of bringing that aid in. The Gaza government media office stated over the weekend that more than 250,000 displaced people have been directly affected by rainwater, floods, and landslides that have damaged their dilapidated tents. This disaster, the office added, quote, which we warned about, discussed, and predicted, comes within the context of the larger humanitarian catastrophe resulting from the genocidal war and the unjust siege imposed by the Israeli occupation on the Gaza Strip. The occupation continues to close the crossings, prevent the entry of relief aid and shelter materials, and prevent the entry of 300,000 tents, mobile homes, and caravans, as well as preventing the construction or preparation of alternative shelters for the displaced. Al-Shifa Hospital, which was the largest medical facility in Gaza and predates the Israeli state, and which was the target of numerous sieges, raids, and bombing attacks during the last 2 years of genocide, was also flooded, worsening the situation for patients and medical staff who are still unable to obtain basic medicine, equipment, and supplies for repairs to the building. Mahmoud Basal of the Civil Defense posted this video on Monday of water pouring into the reception and triage department from the damaged ceiling. Al Jazeera's Tarek Abu Azoum filmed himself touring the hollowed-out shell of the Turkish Friendship Hospital earlier this week. The hospital had been the only cancer treatment facility in Gaza until it was taken over by the Israeli army and destroyed from within.
Now, in the Turkish Friendship Hospital, which is the sole cancer treatment facility across the Strip, it was responsible for providing medical treatment for thousands of cancer patients in the Strip. Now, it has been completely lying in ruins. This area, and this hospital in particular, has been under the Israeli military control for more than 2 years, and it was used by the Israeli military as a key command and control center where they have destroyed once they have finished their military operations in the Strip. We can see different Hebrew writing being written here on these walls where children and elderly people used to receive medical treatment. But what's so alarming to see on the ground is the scale of devastation. Most of these equipment here that we saw at this hospital have been destroyed. Corridors are simply seen as corridor of nightmares. People are quite scared to enter this building. Specifically, it's located near Netzarim corridor, and these medical wards have been massively destroyed by the Israeli military. We are so cautious while we're moving, given that the Israeli military has turned this medical facility into a lifeless wasteland. We can see here the scale of devastation, and basically they have left behind no medical department standing, and this has a great impact on the ability of cancer patients to receive their treatment across the Strip. We can here see these corridors quite filled with devastation and destruction. And what we have heard from Gaza's medical teams, that this hospital was one of the most sophisticated hospitals in the Strip to provide medical treatment. But now it has been in a state of chaos, destruction that will take years in order to be rehabilitated again.
That was Tarek Abu Azoum at the site of the Turkish Friendship Hospital in Gaza. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces killed 3 children this week in separate attacks. On December 13th, Israeli soldiers shot and killed 16-year-old Mohammed Iyad Abarha in a town northwest of Jenin. According to documentation by Defense for Children International Palestine, or DCIP, quote, Mohammed allegedly participated in confrontations with Israeli forces alongside other young Palestinians who were throwing explosive devices toward a heavily armored Israeli military vehicle during a military incursion into Silat al-Harithiyah when he was shot from a distance of about 15 to 20 meters away. He was targeted by Israeli soldiers who were positioned inside a Palestinian home. The teenager fell to the ground and several soldiers dragged him toward the entrance of the house, DCIP stated. The soldiers then prevented an ambulance from approaching Mohammed and left him bleeding for around 10 minutes. They placed Mohammed inside a military vehicle and then left the town. The Palestinian Health Ministry then received news of his death later that evening. His body was also confiscated, DCIP said. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 Accountability Program Director at DCIP, said, quote, Mohammed grew up in a hyper-militarized environment where Israeli soldiers regularly carry out military incursions into Palestinian communities, harass and detain Palestinians at checkpoints, and kill Palestinians, including children, with live ammunition with complete impunity. Israeli soldiers continue targeting children with deadly force with no accountability because world leaders allow them to act without consequence. On December 15th, Israeli forces stormed the village of Tuku, east of Bethlehem, firing live ammunition from their positions in the center of the town, according to local media sources. Israeli soldiers shot 16-year-old Amar Sabah in the chest, killing him. Less than 24 hours later, an Israeli settler shot another 16-year-old child in the head near the northern entrance of Tuku. Mohib Ahmed Ali Jabrin was killed instantly, and another youth suffered injuries. The Wafa news agency said that the murder happened shortly after Palestinians finished funeral ceremonies for Amar Sabah. According to the mayor of Tuku, mourners had begun to leave when several youths remained near the town's entrance. A settler then exited his vehicle and fired live ammunition at them without warning. DCIP says that in 2025, Israeli forces and settlers killed 54 Palestinian children in the occupied West Bank. In their year-end report, the human rights group says that 2025 has shown, quote, with devastating clarity that Palestinian children are facing a crisis not of law, but of enforcement. International protections exist. International obligations are clear. Yet the international community continues to shield Israel and as its forces starve, torture, disappear, and kill Palestinian children with unprecedented brutality. Quote, awareness alone is not enough, DCIP added. Palestinian children deserve safety, justice, and a future free from violence. They deserve a world willing to uphold the laws created to protect them. Meanwhile, in Nur Shams refugee camp in the north, Palestinian residents are being forced to leave their homes following demolition orders by the Israeli army of 25 residential buildings and houses. Residents of Nur Shams were subjected to humiliating searches by Israeli forces as they tried to collect belongings from their homes ahead of the demolitions, which began today, December 18th. The entire camp has been under siege by the Israeli army since January 2025. Roland Friedrich, the director of UNRWA affairs for the occupied West Bank, said on Tuesday that, quote, this new demolition order fits the pattern we have seen too often this year, with Israeli forces destroying homes to enable their long-term control over the camps in the northern West Bank, permanently altering their topography. In activism news from the UK, 6 political prisoners in British jails associated with the banned group Palestine Action have now been on hunger strike for a month or more. My colleague Asa Winstanley recently interviewed the sister of Kamran Ahmed, one of the prisoners, as well as a spokesperson for the group Prisoners for Palestine, which supports the hunger strike. The hunger strikers are demanding to be released on bail, the right to a fair trial, and an immediate end to what they say is their persecution by the British government. Most have already been held on remand far longer than the normal 6-month maximum, which the law allows before trial. This week, supporters of the imprisoned activists, including MP Zahra Sultana and 2 doctors, have maintained a presence outside the HMP Bronzefield prison where Qasr Zohra is held, while she's nearing 50 days of her hunger strike. Prisoners for Palestine says that as of Wednesday, Zohra reported symptoms requiring urgent medical intervention. Quote, despite repeated calls for emergency care, prison staff have so far refused entry to ambulances and delayed treatment overnight, prompting Zahra Sultana MP and medical professionals to stage a night-long campout outside the prison. Fellow hunger striker John Sink reported that he saw an ambulance at around 9 p.m. on December 16th being turned away by the prison. Earlier today, December 18th, after more than 12 hours of a sustained protest outside the prison, an ambulance was finally allowed to reach 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜. MP Zahra Sultana stated, quote, "From 2 a.m. in freezing temperatures, we were forced to protest for more than 12 hours before an ambulance was finally dispatched to HMP Bronzefield so that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 could receive the urgent medical care she needs. Just as Keir Starmer's Labour government has enabled genocide in Gaza, it is now enabling the deaths of Palestine Solidarity hunger strikers inside UK prisons. We demand immediate bail for all remand political prisoners." Rahma Hoxha, the sister of imprisoned hunger striker 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, sent the Electronic Intifada this update on her sister's condition on Wednesday.
And my sister is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜. She's currently on hunger strike for the liberation of the Palestinians and for the 5 demands, which are shut Elbit down, immediate bail, deprescribe, end all censorship, and the right to a fair trial. She believes that once everything gets stripped away from you, there is no autonomy or choice, and that the only thing you have left is your body, as you have full control over it, and she's using that against the system. My sister is on day 38 of her hunger strike. She's weak, she's feeling dizzy, she's constantly having headaches and constantly feeling nauseous. Even though she's feeling very weak, she's very firm on her demands. And she's struggling to drink and take medications as she feels sick and unwell. She is really struggling. She was hospitalized and had to discharge herself against medical advice, as they wouldn't let her speak to her solicitor or her next of kin. I don't think people realize how serious this hunger strike is, as on day 35, you have organ failure, you can have brain damage, and you can have a heart attack. The government really needs to engage with these demands. These demands are very reasonable. The longer this goes on, the scarier it gets for her and for my family. My sister shouldn't even have to be in prison. She's been on remand for over a year, and her trial is not until April 2026. This is her second hunger strike. The first hunger strike she had, the guards called her a terrorist, even though her trial has not happened yet. And she said it feels like the government is trying to bury them alive and for them to go quietly. She also said that once you are labeled a terrorist, it's like entering a black hole. As once you have a label, society is conditioned to accept it and not ask questions. I feel as though the state has taken away a piece of me and shattered my heart. My sister is my best friend, my soulmate, and my mother figure. I don't want to lose my sister. I don't want to have to imagine a life without her. I need her in my life, and I love her so much, and I'm honestly so grateful for her. She always cheers me up and motivates me. And even from prison, she keeps me in check. She makes me do my homework and revision. My sister's always there for me. She used to take me out on hot chocolate dates, shopping sprees, and she would even come to every appointment I had. And now it's just so lonely without her, and I really miss her. And this made me become more independent. I wish the state wasn't so cruel. At one point, the prison took away my phone number for a month, and that month was a difficult period for me, as I only get to visit my sister once a week, because it's really hard to go visit her and have school, and I have to bring an adult with me every time, and the prison is really far. But I am grateful I get to speak to my sister, I get to see my sister, because I know that the Palestinians that are being detained in Israel, their families don't even know where they are, and their families don't know whether they are alive or dead. The government really needs to engage with these demands. In the 1980s, 10 Irish hunger strikers died. The state let them die, and that is what they're trying to do now.
That was Rahma Hoxha, whose sister T is on a hunger strike at HMP Peterborough. We'll continue to follow this story on electronicintifada.net. We've published many features on the Electronic Intifada in the last week, but we wanted to highlight Gaza's Fishers Tempt Fate to Feed the Hungry by Hassan Harzala, writing from Gaza. Break of dawn in Gaza used to have its own rhythm, smell, and sounds, Hassan writes. Excuse me. As fishers set out to sea, the sound of the engines on their vessels would carry far and wide on a salty breeze. The calm belied the bustle that would come as markets filled up and restaurants across Gaza prepared for customers filing in for fresh fish. Fishing is more than a job in Gaza. Gaza's is a maritime population. Fishing has always been part of the culture, part of the collective memory here. It is the kind of living that is passed down from fathers and grandfathers who have lived by the shore for generations. But over the past 2 years, the same sea, once a source of livelihood for an estimated 110,000 people in Gaza, has instead borne witness to great suffering, its shoreline a last refuge for those trying to survive amid famine, bombardment, and siege. Since the age of 10, Mohammed al-Nahal, 26, would accompany his father and older brothers on daily fishing trips aboard their launch or small boat. It was a daily routine and a family ritual, a tradition passed down through generations in a family that has always lived by the sea. Before the genocide, Israel's Navy would allow Gaza's fishers to sail up to 6 nautical miles into the sea, far short of the 12 miles they should have been allowed under international law. But Mohammed said the sea was generous enough. We would cast the nets for just a short while, and because there were so many fish, we used to fill 10 to 15 boxes, each with around 15 kilos of different kinds of fish. Pricing was simple. From the cheaper but always popular sardines, 3 kilos for $3, Mohammed remembered happily, to the more expensive Denise or sea bream, never more than $15. Fishing was easier. It took less effort and less time. The engines ran on fuel and the sea offered bounty. From the first days of the genocide, however, the sea seemed to close its doors on Gaza's fishers. Israeli patrol boats watched every movement. The waves carried the smell of gunpowder instead of salt. The winds, the sound of bombings. Fishing was no longer a daily routine. It became a deeply precarious task that could end in death or detention. One night we were out when we found ourselves directly in the line of fire, said Samir Tabasi, 21, a fisherman local to Khan Yunis. Shells were fired at us. One landed in the water, luckily not hitting us. As we were coming out of the sea, we were shot at on the shore. One of our friends was injured, and the tents along the beach were also targeted, resulting in 1 death. Gaza's fishing sector has suffered a catastrophic collapse, according to the UN, and the sector operates at just 7.3% of its pre-genocide production capacity. This dramatic decline is having a devastating impact on food security, income generation, and community resilience across Gaza. As winter approaches, there has never been more need for fishers in Gaza, but cold winds and high waves test their remaining fragile boats, while the constant threat of targeting makes every trip to the sea a potentially deadly undertaking. Still they go, said Samir. They have little choice but to continue risking their lives just to put food on the table. Those are excerpts from Gaza's Fishers Tempt Fate to Feed the Hungry by Hassan Harzala, writing from Gaza on electronicintifada.net. And now, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and resilience across Gaza and around the world. Ahmed Mouin Abu Amsha, a music teacher, posted this video of him leading a group of kids in a song on the beach during a break between storms. He writes, quote, "Despite the strong winds, heavy rain, and the harsh cold of the storm, we gathered together. We were soaked by the rain. The weather was unforgiving, but we refused to let these conditions take joy away from the children. In the middle of the storm, we chose music. We chose laughter, singing, and warm moments that reminded us all that happiness can still exist, even in the hardest times. Seeing the smiles on the children's faces was worth every drop of rain. Today, we didn't just escape the weather, we brought joy back to their hearts. Music is stronger than the storm. Joy is stronger than the cold.
Me! Ow! I feel good. Da, 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 da. I feel good. Da, 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 da. So good. So good. I feel good. Da, 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 da. I feel good. Da, 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 da. So good. So good. I feel good. Da, 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 da.
That was Ahmed Mouin Abu Amsha in Gaza and his students. And finally, I wanted to just take a minute to talk about my friend and a steadfast supporter of the Electronic Intifada, Barbara Lubin. Barbara died on Saturday, surrounded by her family. Barbara Lubin co-founded the Middle East Children's Alliance in 1988 with Howard Levine in Berkeley, California, and dedicated her entire life to making the world better for children from the US to Palestine, Iraq, and Lebanon. She was an anti-Vietnam War activist. She fought for the rights of disabled children here in the States, helping to write legislation that would be the precursor to the Americans with Disabilities Act. And she became a passionate and stubborn anti-Zionist activist who pissed off all the right people and never backed down from a righteous fight over Palestinian rights. She defied Bill Clinton's murderous U.S. sanctions in Iraq in the 1990s by smuggling medicine in her suitcases when no other U.S. organization dared to. She and Mecca funded playgrounds and community projects in Lebanon, especially in the Palestinian refugee camps. And in Palestine for decades, she worked with community activists, farmers, artists, doctors, and cultural workers to provide children with a life of dignity, joy, and safety. And personally, Barbara was a major figure in my life. She helped shape my politics and my principles, and she loved me like a daughter, for which I will be forever grateful. In a tribute to Barbara, the staff at Mecca says, Barbara's life was dedicated to the idea that what was good for her kids was good for everyone's kids. This led her to build community and solidarity beyond national, ethnic, and religious boundaries. She leaves a profoundly important legacy, not only in Mecca, but in the lives of everyone who knew her. And Michel Shahade, who is the former president of the Mecca board and was a member of the LA8, a group of Palestine solidarity activists who were persecuted by the federal government for years, beginning in the 1980s, wrote that, quote, Barbara showed us what it means to choose humanity over comfort, justice over silence, and love over fear. She taught us that solidarity is not an idea, but a lifelong practice. We are better for having walked this path with her and poorer for her absence, yet richer beyond measure for what she gave us. We love you, Barbara. We are grateful for your work. And we carry on your fight, your biting and caustic sense of humor, and your enormous, noble heart. And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza.